Hello, friends. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Craft Your Joy Live. I'm Lisa Hetrick. I'm super excited to be here with you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Uh, okay, friends. I think we all just take a big, deep breath in, right? Big, deep breath in. I see friends popping in. Mary, Gloria, TJ, Judith, Lynn. Hey, everybody. Oh, Oh my goodness, Mary. So sorry to hear about the weather. Weather's a little bit crazy right now. Seems like everywhere. I'm in Maryland. We have a storm that's coming through as well. I'm glad to hear, Mary, you're okay. Good morning, Rhonda. Ah, okay, friends. Today I have we're taking a breath. I have a brand new Gina K stamp set coming out on Tuesday. So I've got quite a bit of preparation going on over there in my workspace for that new release. But today I wanted to come in and be with you today and share a watercolor paint and chat tutorial. We usually do these once a month. The link, if you're interested, if you're painting along, then you probably got the line art illustration for today's painting in your email. Or if you're new to the channel or you're not on my email list, that link is down below in the description that you can get. So you could paint now or you could paint afterwards. So see everybody popping in, even more people popping in. Hello, hello. I'm so excited to see everybody today. Okay, today is a watercolor tutorial, watercolor paint and chat. I am going to talk about, it occurred to me that I had been getting a lot of questions about budget-friendly watercolor products, and I have talked a lot about different budget-friendly things over the course of my channel. And I wanted to pull back and kind of let's go ahead and dive into some of those things. So today I'm going to talk about paint, watercolor pan paint, and specifically going to talk about the paper that I mention all the time. The Canson watercolor paper, and in specifically watercolor paper that's cellulose paper. And just because you have this paper doesn't mean you're going to get subpar watercolor results. Today I'm going to walk through, and over this course of this month, I'm going to walk through how you can use budget-friendly supplies and get the results that you're looking for simply by adjusting the kinds of techniques that you use on this kind of paper. Okay. All right. I hope that makes good sense. A lot of people had been asking me, I get a lot of questions about, what paint should I buy? What paper should I buy? And I make some suggestions, and I thought some budget-friendly items would be kind of nice to go over right now. So, thank you, Tressa. People are saying they're ready for the new release. I am getting ready for the new release. I was making products with it yesterday. I'll be making more today and tomorrow and shooting video. I'm getting ready. I'm excited for this one, friends. I'm excited. We'll talk more about it in our paint and chat, but let's go ahead and dive in. So today I'm gonna walk through painting this fun watering can that I just did a really quick line art illustration for. And again, that link is down below in the description. You can download that watering can for free and print it out on your favorite watercolor paper, or you can take that line art illustration, take your watercolor paper and tape it to a sunny window and you can trace it out. Or if you have a light box, like one of those little light boxes, you could do that there. So, TJ says, I'm using Aquarelle thick cotton paper. It's kind of bumpy. Will it work today? Any kind of paper that you have today, any kind of paper in your stash will work for today. The techniques that we're going to do will work on any kind of paper, which gives me the nice segue to talk about paper next. I'm just focusing on this Canson paper and this budget-friendly paper to just kind of give arm you with some techniques for this kind of cellulose paper. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about paper and talk about results that you get with paper. And then I'm going to talk about paints, and specifically the Cotman watercolor paints, and then a new super budget friendly watercolor paint that I've just recently got. This is the watercolor chart for it, that is surprisingly looks a lot like Cotman. And so kind of interesting. Cotman's made by Winsor & Newton. And I do love Winsor & Newton watercolors. And the reason why I love them is because they are predictable and they do exactly what you expect them to do. So when you're getting started in watercolor, sometimes that predictability and that feeling of knowing exactly what it's going to do is very valuable to you. So, and we'll talk about that more as I'm painting, but let's talk about paper. I'm getting texts. Here we go. Canson watercolor paper. I always talk about 100% cotton paper on this channel, and I'm predominantly using Strathmore Ready Cut watercolor. Talk about it all the time. It's 100% cotton. It's great for my paper crafting projects. This is Arches paper. It's 100% pure cotton. I love it. However, it's a little on the pricey side. So sometimes I want to do a project where I'm just kind of testing some things out. I might not necessarily use this paper. So what's important about this is understanding the paper that you have and the techniques that you can do on it. And sometimes you can modify your watercolor techniques to get better results with the paper that you have. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this paper, this is Canson XL watercolor paper. Very common, very easy to get. I have links down below in your description. You can find it in a lot of big box stores, Amazon, Dick Blick, all the places. This is a paper that is very, very easy to get. And it's very inexpensive. For the 30 sheets of paper, it's usually like around, you can get it on sale for like $9, $10, $11. It's around that price range. It is a cold press paper. It is not 100% cotton. It is a cellulose paper. So it has a texture to it. I got a little something that just popped up on my screen. Let me turn that off. It's got a texture to it. It's got like a grainier side and a smooth side. And you'll find that sometimes a lot of sketchbooks will have this kind of paper in it. But what it is it's compressed paper. So it's wood pulp compressed down really tight and makes this nice little watercolor paper. So what the difference is using the cellulose paper versus 100% cotton often is in the level of vibrancy. I have found the level of vibrancy that you can get with your projects. So this is the watering can. This is the same. I use the same paints. I use these Phoenix paints that I'm going to talk about. And I got a little bit of different results when I painted them. The thing that I love about the 100% cotton paper is I'm a washy watercolor painter. I like to paint in wet washes. Wet washes don't really work as well on our Canson style paper because it's cellulose paper. The water doesn't have anywhere to go, so to speak. It doesn't go deep into the fibers of the paper like it would a cotton paper. It kind of floats on top, which isn't a bad thing. It's just different. So one of the points I want to make is that I don't like the idea of, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. You have to use this paper. You have to use these watercolors. No. I don't like that at all. I like okay, here's the kind of watercolor I have. I know how it works. Let's test out and see what papers work best for the kinds of techniques and paintings I like to do. So, why I think this tutorial will be helpful is that I can show you how you can get really beautiful effects. Like, I think this watering can is beautiful. It's a little bit more muted in tone than this one because with the Canson and cellulose paper, you're not adding like glazing and adding in like 5 and 6 and 7 layers of color. You're kind of doing 1 to 2 to 3 max. So you've heard me talk about on this channel and in tutorials, glazing and layering your watercolor paints. You jack up that luminosity by layering, waiting between each layer for things to dry, and you're adding more color on top. And over time, you're building up a really deep saturation of color. It's a little bit different with the Canson paper. You're building up some color, and you can see that I've got some really nice buildup here. But it's not as deep and as intense as a buildup on 100% cotton paper. But that's okay. That's okay. You can still get beautiful results, and you can still like have the experience of joy in painting in watercolor. Okay. I feel like I really nerded out a little bit about the cellulose paper. So let's do a real quick dive into the two, like the budget friendly watercolors that I wanted to talk about. Now, I've talked about Cotman before. I'm going to bring them in. These are just a couple of my Cotman watercolor sets. Here's some Cotman watercolors in tubes. I've just lost my word mid-sentence. In tubes. What a beautiful array of colors, right? And then here are some of the same colors. This is a set of 24. Look at that vibrancy and beauty in that color. They've got a good color payout. I've shared Cotman watercolors on the channel before, and many of you have seen me talk about them. Here's a couple other sets right here. This is that little pocket box set of 12. This is a great little set. It's very handy, and you can kind of carry it around. And then here's a little set that I've kind of built. I've got a couple other things in here too, of some custom Winsor Newton Cotman colors. Love it. Love them. Just love them. I love the Cotman watercolors, and here's why. I love all kinds of watercolors. Now, the difference between Cotman watercolors and an artist grade watercolor, and this is true with student watercolors and artist grade watercolors, and you'll hear that in marketing terms. The difference is there is more pigment in the professional watercolors, more pigment load in the professional watercolors than there are in the student watercolors. Is that a bad thing? No, it's just different. So when you're getting started in watercolor, I always recommend you spend more on your paper than you do your paints because you'll get better results with the paper that you're working with. But if you're starting out with a student grade watercolor or a more budget friendly watercolor, I always recommend the Cotmans. There are others that I recommend and I'll share throughout the month. And you've heard me talk about them on this channel before. Paul Rubens, White Knights. There's so many different ones on the market. But I find that I come back to the Cotmans quite a bit because of their consistency and reliability. So, okay, now, still completely nerding out and need to move on. I have recently found this set. It was very, very interesting to me. It's called Phoenix Watercolors, and I found them on Amazon. Here, I painted out the colors so that you can see them. I also saw a tutorial, Lindsay Wyrick, the Frugal Crafter. She did a tutorial maybe like a year ago on these Phoenix watercolors. and talked about how close they were to being being Cotman, that she thought that they might be the same as Cotman. I kind of agree with her. I did like a little match to match of like these colors, and they really, really do like this look like the same formulation of Cotman. After the tutorial, I'll link up her video that talks about the difference between these two. And you can kind of watch that. It was fascinating to me. And I saw these Phoenix watercolors, and the reason why I was intrigued by these is because of packaging, friends, because of packaging. So they have this thing here, like this little water can, and it came with a brush. And the brush is pretty nice. The brush is pretty nice. And then it also came with this little sponge thing. And I'm not like doing a review. I am going to use these paints because I don't really do reviews. I just share tutorials, and I share content. But the thing I thought that was unique about these paints is A, they're very beautiful, but B, they did this like locking in thing. So they lock in like this, and then this one kind of does this, oh, wait a minute, let me flip it, does this like twist and locks in to this side. And I was like, that's kind of cool. And I'm a sucker for a good palette that you can travel with. So I thought this was kind of fun. And you put this on the side, and I'm really nerding out and just kind of showing you these things. You put this little water thing on the side. And I see everybody making some comments about this, and I'm going to pop in. And then you put this thing right here, and it's like a little brush. And I was just like, wait, what? When I saw it, and I'm like, that's just cool. I picked it up. It was like $20. I think it might have been marked down like 5% or something. I picked it up and I was like, let me just try it and see how I feel about the paints. And I got them. I've been playing with the paints for a bit, and they are literally just like Cotman. So anyway, we're going to use them today, and we're going to, I'm going to mix up some colors, but look at these colors. They are so vibrant, so vibrant. And we're going to use them. They're budget friendly, and we're going to get some good results today. So I see Catherine shared, I started with the professional, but when you mentioned the sale on the Winsor Newton Cotman, I bought a set for practice. Yes, that's a great idea. If you feel like you want to practice, Cotman is great. Like, using your budget-friendly watercolors are great for practicing, swatching, practicing your brushstroke techniques, things like that. I love that idea. Cheryl said, "Oh my, you saw these and almost bought the set last week." I know, isn't that wild? They apparently have 12. This is 24. This is 24? No, this is 36. 12, 24, 36, and 48. The 48, I was like, wait, that was a lot. I'm not going to get that. And the 12 wasn't available, and the 24 wasn't available. So I just picked up this one. I know, Tressa, this is a weird setup. It's definitely like definitely well-designed concept. I think it's called Twistin' something. I thought I kept the packaging. I thought I kept the box. I might have kept the box. Oh, I might have found the box. It might be right here. Yeah, here it is. Look at that. Here it is. Phoenix. Now, the other thing is that logo is really close to looking a lot like Winsor & Newton. Look at that. It's just that Winsor & Newton one is going in the other direction. So, you know. It's called Twist. So here was the packaging. Kind of fun. Anyway. I very rarely like share. This was just a fun find, a really good fun find. And it fits into the concept of our budget friendly watercolors. that I wanted to talk about today. I'm trying to get my setup here, you know, being the lefty that I am. We might have to kind of put those up here. Okay, let's dive in. I feel like I've nerded out quite a bit. We're like, you know, half an hour in and I haven't even painted yet. So let's get going. All right, friends. So here's our reference. And let's keep our reference kind of right here. It's right underneath my face, but then everybody can see it. And if I need to move my face, we'll move my face. So we're going to start by loading up some colors onto my palette. Now this is just a porcelain dish. I think it's a spoon rest, to be honest. But I really like it, and I have these little felt tabs on the bottom so that it can slide around on my glass. I'm going to use a number 6 round brush, and I'm probably going to use this number 6 the entire time. Now, what we know about working with the cellulose paper is that it can't really take a lot of water. And what I mean by that is I can get a nice little layer of water on here. Let me pick up some color. The other thing I like about this Phoenix is that it really does activate very quickly. Like I can get a really nice layer of color here. Well, that looks very day glow. But you can see that I'm really able to kind of scrape it off, move it around, but it's laying on the surface of the paper. It's not taking a deep dive into the fibers of the paper. So keeping that in mind with cellulose paper, we're going to approach our watercolor project a little bit differently than we would a cotton paper. For cotton, we would do a lot of wet into wet techniques. Brushes wet, paper's wet, pigment's wet, everything's wet. We're making it all move on the paper. What I found with the cellulose paper, the papers like Canson, is that it's much nicer experience to work wet into dry and keeping my paper dry and then getting my application of color onto my paper gradually. Okay, so I'm going to start off by just getting some color. I've got some sap green here, and I'm just going to put quite a bit down. The other thing about budget-friendly paints is you can see that I kind of have to scrape over the paint a couple times. When you're working with an artist grade, you can swipe a couple times, maybe once, twice, and you got quite a bit of pigment on your brush. Got a good, nice pigment load of color. When you're working with like a Cotman or a budget-friendly, to get a lot of color, I'm kind of getting a lot on my brush and get going. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit of, first I'm going to start off with a little bit of green. I'm also going to take a little bit of this Payne's Gray and just kind of get that down, because we're going to mix up some darker greens by adding a little bit of Payne's Gray to sap green. You can see that the greens are beautiful in this set, and I've got that olive green, and we're probably going to use that, but I'm going to, here's the olive green. The olive green's over here. I'll add a little bit of that over here. I'm also going to take some of that phthalo blue, nope, that's not it. Here it is. Phthalo blue is right here. Just kind of pop these on my palette here. Just so that, and the reason why I'm doing this is so I have it at the ready. I've got a lot, I'm going to come out a little wider because we got a lot going on here. And I want you to be able to see all the things. And I'm a lefty, so it always makes it a little weird. Okay, cleaning off my brush. My brush is wet, my paper is dry. We're going to start by getting just a very light layer of the sap green across my paper. Okay, so my brush is wet. I'm going to pull some of this sap green out, and I'm really getting quite a bit of water on it. See how this has got that like 100% whole milk consistency. I'm going to bring some water into the mix here and get this down to kind of a really pale skim milk, oat milk, almond milk consistency if you're dairy free. And then I'm just going to start to apply. I'm going to turn my paper this way. See how I'm just kind of applying some color along the edge here? And then just cleaning off my brush. Brush is wet, but not sopping wet, okay? And then we're just going to start to like paint it across the edge. Lynn said she's a fellow lefty. Feel your pain. For real. Friends, if you have questions along the way today on our paint and chat, just pop question in the chat. My chat's over here. I'll see it, and it also makes a little noise, so it helps me to hear it when there's new questions popping in. So see how I'm doing a really light wash layer, and as I get like halfway across, you can see that I'm starting to run out of water because I'm really working with very, very light layers of this color. And I'm just adding as we go. Lefty! Lefties, more lefties. Tress is a lefty too. I am a lefty that eats with my left hand and I write with my left hand. But I do everything else with my right hand. And I've told that story many times, I think, on this channel about the difference. Because I grew up in the 70s, in my elementary school years. Got that first layer on there. Love it, dig it, going to leave it, okay? You can see that it dries really quickly. And those light layers are very vibrant. So see how we can get these vibrant looks with this paper, but we're working in very light washes. Okay, so now I'm going to do a little bit more of that layering over here. We're going to do a little bit on our handles and our spout. So I grew up in, my early years were in the 70s, and when I was in elementary school, like, there weren't a lot of lefties. So when they were teaching handwriting, I never learned how to print. We went right to cursive, and we're going to do a little application of this color right here. We went right to cursive. Notice how I'm really choked up on the brush because I'm really just going for quite a bit of control here. Controlling the paint and just kind of painting it in a very traditional way, like back and forth strokes, at least for this first layer. And it's very, very light wash. So we kind of went to I never really learned how to print. We went right to cursive, which they don't even do cursive anymore in school, which is interesting to me. So we went right to cursive, and when they were trying to teach me cursive, the paper was turned in the opposite direction, like for a right-hander. So my slanting of my handwriting was off for being a lefty. So I feel like they just weren't really armed for teaching lefties, and they always tried to give me, there weren't lefty scissors either. So I just kind of learned how to do everything as a right-hander. So I do, I did everything. My dominant hand is, for most things, is right, which is kind of interesting. But which makes me have a lot more skills, I think. So kind of interesting how things were back then. Now we don't have, now we have, lefty scissors and lefty notebooks and things like that. I always found notebooks a pain in the butt because, especially like spiral notebooks, because the spiral would always get in your hand, and then when you're writing, you're always smudging your paper, which was kind of, messy, smudgy paper. Okay, so kind of a little fun nerd out there. So getting that layer of color on there, see how light my washes are? Very, very, very light. Very, very light, that first layer. Now, I said that Canson and papers like this are very, very difficult to do multiple layers of color on them. They can be, but if you start off with this very light wash, see how I feel like that's even a little bit too much water? If you start off with a very, very light wash, you can gradually build up that luminosity that we're going for and get a really beautiful result. Like this has a lot of texture and dimension in it, and it is on the budget friendly paper. So let's do it, right? Okay. See that little splooge? I'm just going to get that. Okay. All right, so I've got a nice little layer of color in here. When we add the blacks and the brown color, like the burnt sienna, we'll do that later. I'm going to focus on the greens right now and deepening the greens. So I've got this first layer on here. I'm looking at it just to see where we are. Some of the things I want you to notice about working with this, working with the Canson or budget-friendly cellulose paper like this, is that when you're painting in a smooth wash, like we did here, like that's that traditional like back and forth kind of wash, you get a really clean wash of color, right? But when we're painting in the style that I just did, where we were coming this way and kind of coming this way and working our way around the project, you get a little bit of blooming happening on this kind of paper. Okay, that is a little bit of blooming. That means the water is pushing back the pigment and you're getting a little bit of extra texture in the paper. So I find that trying to do a project with all super smoothie washes on this kind of paper is challenging. And if that's what you're going for, I highly recommend going with 100% cotton paper. But if you want to build in more texture, which you can do with 100% cotton paper as well, if you want to build in more texture and the look of a little more graininess, this paper is just fine for that. And you can see that in that texture of this can right here. Okay, so now I'm going to come in and we're going to add a little bit of our dark colors here across the middle and just starting to add in what I'm calling like some shadow color. So that's layer number 2. I'm also going to talk about like the shadows here and the shadow here. So this is building in, so our handle and our handle here loops this way, right? And then what we're not seeing is the back side of that loop. We're seeing the inside of the handle. Same thing with the handle here. So to create that look in your project, you do it with those shadows. We're doing it with some shadow colors. You can see it kind of looks a little bit like a ribbon. So, and same thing on here. We're going to build in some of our shadow colors. Now I'm going to take this sap green. Look, there's a little heart right there. Do you see that? Oh my goodness. Always, always. I'm going to take some of my sap green. Might need to get some more. I love sap green. It's like one of my favorite colors. I know. So is permanent rose. It's one of my favorite colors. Okay, I'm going to take some of this. This is my Payne's Gray. And I'm going to mix these two together right here in the middle. I need a little bit more green. Come on over. Come on over, green. And I'm going to swatch this out so that you can see it. I'm going to get a little bit more of a perylene green, which is like a green-black, right? Get a little bit more of a deeper black. You know, I talked about this last week. I've got a little bird feeder out on the side of my studio window here, and I've been attracting so many birds. It's been fun. And I just saw a brand new birdie. Not sure what kind of bird that is. I'll have to look that up. Okay, we're going to add some color of this perylene green. You can see I've got a consistency here, probably like a 2% milk. Brush is wet, paper's dry. I'm really choked up on my brush here. And I'm just going to come in. Actually, it's a little bit too wet. I'm going to come in from under here and just start to add a little bit of that color. I feel like I did get it a little bit too wet. See, I'm just going to go down and add a little more pigment. I didn't want it to be that washy, but that's okay. Here's how I'm going to recover. Got a little bit too washy here. Going to add in some more and get that consistency a little bit stronger, less watery. And I'm going to just kind of come down here a little messy across there. Clean off my brush, kind of tap, 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 and get that dry. And then just feather out those edges. And I'm really watching my water control with this paper. See how I keep going back and dabbing it off a little bit as I'm feathering out those edges? I really want to watch my water control, and here's why. Too much water is going to start to lift this color. So one of the things about working with the cellulose paper is that it's very, very easy if you start to scrub over what you're working on to lift up and away everything you've done. Because the color and the pigment is kind of sitting on top of the paper. It's not going in. So the cellulose paper is highly scrubbable, right? You make a mistake, you can easily scrub that out. So I'm getting it a little bit too wet. You can see how it's moving. I don't want it to be that wet, so I'm going to dry it real quick. You're going to see the bloom. See that bloom? This is a huge example of what I mean with the blooming. See, we had a lot of pigment and all of that water was pushing back the pigment and you got this little bloom. Some people don't like that. I actually kind of like it in the instance of this particular project. This is a watering can, right? It's got a lot of texture. It's got a lot of dimension. It's kind of grainy. Can be fun. So let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit. I'm pushing it a little bit by adding so much of that layer, but I'm going to come across again and just kind of add another layer of color, and that's probably going to have to be it for the middle to a certain extent. Now my brush is wet, and I'm just feathering out those edges a little bit. So the key to working with the cellulose papers or the papers like Canson or more budget friendly papers is to control your water and know that if you're trying to get super smoothie washes of color, you can achieve that, but it's going to fight with you just a little bit. It's going to fight. This paper wants to give up a fight. So it happens. All right, I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to move over here and start to add in, I keep wanting to go there. Let's grab this. Start to add in some of our darker layers. I think I'm going to have to hold this over here. I don't want to lose all of our reference, and I'm trying to show you the palette, all the things. All right, let's just go up across here. Just kind of feather some of that color in. So see, I'm really just kind of making sure that my brush is not super, super wet. We're doing wet into dry techniques. We're just going to keep doing it. Wet into dry, wet into dry. Around the edge of my spout here, I want to keep that area right there pretty white. I'm going to add just a little bit of that Payne's Gray. And I'm see how I'm tap, 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 tapping it in. Brush dancing it in a little bit. Because I just am feathering it out. Well, getting a lot of water there that I don't want. And I'm just going to go back and forth. The little bit of water that is on the paper, I'm dropping some color in and letting it do its thing. And by doing those little tip, tip, tap, 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 dropping it in, you also are creating texture. So I'm pretty much going to be done with that spout. I think I just want to feather out just a tiny bit right here. Good morning, Karen. Welcome, welcome. We are painting. We're having a paint chat today. And we're talking about budget-friendly watercolor supplies. Let's take a quick drink. Oh my goodness. All right. Now, I feel like I've got some nice darks here. Now I want to come in over here and add just a little bit more to liven this side up a little bit. Let's add a little bit more. Again, layer number 2 on this side. We're going to add a little bit more of our sap green. And I'm not so choked up on the brush. I'm just coming out and just kind of like curving it in a little bit. Looks a little bit like a hot mess. That's okay. Clean off your brush. And now we're just going to feather it out a little bit. And the reason why I'm working from this side and then this side is because the watering can is not flat. It's not flat. It's round. It's got a rounded edge. So what we're trying to do is build up color that helps us see, helps our eyes see and understand that this has shape to it. So I'm working from this side and then this side and then back and forth. So, all right, let's grab some of this darker color. I kind of want to put a little bit right here. And then I really have to start to watch it now. I have to start to watch how many layers I'm applying. Because, oh, that got wet. That got too wet. Because the paper's not going to hold it, right? This isn't 100% cotton paper, so it's not going to hold it. So we know that about this paper. So you can see already, see how that little bit of extra water right here ended up lifting up some of that color. So here's the thing. This is starting to look really nice. It's starting to get some shape. And we're going to be able to add some detail in around the bottom that is going to give it some life. And it's going to give it that 3D quality. I forgot about our little piece right here. Just going to add a little tiny bit right there to come across. Hi, Deborah. See, everybody's just kind of having a chat. Oh, Deborah shared that she tried the Phoenix paint. Then you like them. I swear, if you like the Cotman paints, you're going to like the Phoenix paints, because I'm pretty sure. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure they're the same paints. They're the same exact paints. And that happens quite a bit out there in the world. You know, these private paints, these companies that come out with different paints that seem a lot like something you've used in the past. They've private labeled them. But these Phoenix, I think there's something. And like I said, Lindsay Wyrick, the Frugal Crafter, she did a video about the differences, how she thought that they were one and the same, the Cotman and the Phoenix. So, and I tend to agree with her. Because they're really nice and they're performing very much like a Cotman. All right, I'm getting some more paint. I've got this Payne's Gray over here. I'm going to put some Payne's Gray right here, and I'm mixing that sap green in there. Let's get that nice little mix to get that beautiful perylene green. And then we're going to come in to the top here. Now I've got, oh, that's pretty dark. I'm going to come around here and just add a little bit of that color. That color was a little too wet, so I'm going to drop, just kind of really get the wetness off of my brush. Ay. Got a little blooming going on down here, so I'm going to lift that up and away. See how easily I can lift the paint off of the Canson paper. It comes off pretty quick, pretty easily, because it's sitting on the surface. All right, I've lost a little time over here. So let's just go ahead and scrub some of this out. Scrubbing some of this out and just kind of working with what's here. I want to preserve some of my whites right here because we're looking kind of at a different angle here of the top of the can. So I don't want my dark color to immediately go right around here. But I do want there to be a sense that there's a shadow there. Bring a little bit back here. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of the sap green kind of in the middle. Let that do its thing. Clean off my brush. Get my brush really, it's wet, but not super, super wet. And just kind of feather that out right along that edge. Feather it out. Feather it out. So see how we can get a sense that there's dimension, that we're kind of looking at the top of that watering can and we're looking over the lip of it because there's a little bit of lightness there and then there's darkness. Those are all just kind of techniques that help you take your one-dimensional image and give it a little bit of a 3D look and bring it to life a little bit. Now, see how when I added that color down here, it gets very, it's blooming out. So Karen, yes, I do find that this Canson, so I'm sharing budget friendly watercolor paper and watercolor products this month because people have asked, but I do find that this paper can be tedious to work with. And I shared it can be tedious to work with when I'm using a style that's super washy, which is my style, right? So I'm trying to share like, okay, you can get good results with this paper, but you have to adjust your techniques and adjust your expectations. So here's what I find that this paper works good for: practicing techniques or knowing that you're coming in with working in wet into dry techniques with maximum 1 to 2 layers of color, which we've done here, and no more than that, because otherwise you're really fighting with the paper. I also think that Canson papers and papers like this are kind of fun for creating this extra texture and scrubby kind of look to it. I feel like they work well. Now, and they absolutely work well with dye-based watercolors. So like P.H. Martin's Radiant watercolors that are like in the like liquid watercolors. I think liquid watercolors are great on them. I think if you use Zig markers or any kind of water-based marker on your paper crafting projects, I tend to lean towards this kind of paper because those things lay on the surface of the paper and you can make them move and you get vibrant looks. So yeah, but it's not, it can be tedious. Exactly. It can be very much so. But I wanted to challenge everyone, or more like some of the questions that I had been receiving were, hey, what can I do with the budget friendly products that I have? Well, here's some of the things that you can do. And it really is about understanding and knowing your techniques and adjusting your expectations sometimes. I find that a lot of the sketchbooks that are out, like the mainstream sketchbooks, have this kind of paper. Now I'm adding in dark layers right here to get that shadow look so that you get that feeling of that handle, that we're looking at the inside of the handle. See that my brush is very wet, too wet, and too much pigment. So I think that the cellulose paper is great, and the sketchbooks are with the cellulose paper in them are great for practicing techniques and also for working in light layers. very, very light layers. So we've only really worked in 2 layers or so here. Now the top of this is a little bit light, so I'm going to add a little bit more of the sap green to it, just to add one more layer. So layer number 2, and then that's going to be it, because if I add any more layers, it's going to, I'm going to end up scrubbing off what's here. Karen, thank you for explaining. Yeah, so I agree with you, Karen. And often this is like the first paper that we try. And because we fight with it a little bit and we don't get the results that we think we should get, we quit, right? You quit or you feel very defeated. So I think that's really it's a really important lesson, is understanding that the kind of paper you use, more than the paint and more than your brush, the kind of paper that you use will give you the different effects, will give you a different kind of quality, will change the way, the results that you get. But you have to know the paper and what it's able to do, what it's able to take. So I've got this piece right here. Now I'm going to show you how easily it is to get some color off. So this is wet. My brush is wet. My paper is wet. And I'm running my wet brush over that canson. And look how quickly it comes up. So for lifting colors, it's a really ideal paper to work with. So if you're doing some light washes and you're doing some lights and darks and lifting quite a bit, it's a really fun paper to work with. You just have to know what it's capable of doing, what any paper is capable of. And these cellulose papers are not capable of taking super duper wet washes. Now, I've seen artists do super duper wet washes with their paper and they get really neat effects. But what I see is a lot of blooming and a lot of color washes. So that's cool too. I should have, I'm getting this piece right here a little bit darker so that we see that it's the inside of the handle. Ooh, a little bit dark. And I am dropping some color in, but I'm really focused on my water control when I'm using this paper. Gloria, thank you. She said, you're great at explaining everything. I think that's the nerdy part in me that comes out. The nerdy explanations. I also find with this paper that you might struggle to get variant, to really get this vibrancy. We got some vibrancy here. Not the same as this, right? Not the same, but got some nice vibrancy here. I always think that working with this kind of paper, and I'm using artist grade, student grade paints, right? You get more of a muted effect, which is kind of an aesthetic in itself. Okay, got a little schmutz on my page here. Okay. And I would encourage you to try this, because if you're getting started with watercolor, you might have some of this paper and you might have, a more budget-friendly set in your stash. And you may have gone in to try to start painting and didn't get the results that you wanted. I'm going to see if I can lift some of this color out. So another thing is you can really scrub. See, I'm just scrubbing some of that color out off this paper, and it's coming off because the color is sitting kind of on the top and maybe in the first little surface area of it. So yeah, you're able to kind of lift out some things. And we've got some graininess and some texture kind of happening here. And I'm kind of digging it. I like it. And I would encourage you to try it. because I know you may or may not have it in your stash, I want to use this color right here. This color in this set is called Gamboge Hue, but I swear it looks very similar. It looks very similar to a quinacridone gold. So I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it. Hi, Lisa. I want to be more nerdy if that's what it is. It is. It's like this nerd brain of mine that is like, ooh, what can this do? What can this do? And then I retain all of this useless information in my brain of just out of simple curiosity in my life. Like I end up retaining all of this crazy information about how this kind of watercolor works versus this one and why this one is different, when most people would probably just say, I'm going to grab my watercolor set and go. And I'll be like, oh, but that brand will do this versus this brand versus that brand. So, weird brain, weird brain. Cheryl shared, I have used my Canson XL paper when I use my distress ring inkers. Yes, to watercolor. Perfect. So, this kind of paper is great for your paper crafting projects, especially because those are dye-based. Like I said, with the liquid watercolors are generally dye-based. Some are pigment, like the Dr. P.H. Martins. When you're using them, they float on top of this Canson paper, and you can get some really vibrant looks with it. Okay, I'm going to fill in. I'm going to just put a little bit of that Payne's Gray on the back there. Woo, super wet. So I'm also using my Princeton Heritage brushes, which hold a lot of water. So when you're working with this kind of paper, you may want to consider using a brush. If you're using your brushes that hold a lot of water, that's great. But consider wiping off your brush often and really coming in with more of a lighter amount of water. We're really focusing on controlling how much water we have. Okay, let's just go ahead and my eyeballs don't want to work today. I'm getting a little bit of early sinusy stuff. Okay, that's wet. I'm going to take my brush and just kind of lift away. See how easily that lifted? I really didn't have to struggle to lift that color out because it is just sitting on top of the paper. I don't love that. Let's get that out. And then I'm going to come in right here. Oh, wow. Gloria said, I see 28 people watching. Wowza! That's fantastic. It's never lost on me, like, how fun, how wild it is that people watch. I mean, I know people watch on the replay too, but watching live, it's never lost on me, like, how cool that is. So here is the inside. So that's the hole on the top of the can. So you can kind of see in it a little bit, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, we're kind of done here. This is about as far as I can go. I could come in just a little bit, maybe just a little bit across the middle here, little bit, but I can already tell that I'm starting to push that paper a little bit too much, and I can feel it from behind that I've got too much water on, I'm pushing it a little bit. So our max layering of color was like 2 layers, and in some small places, 3. Like little spots like this, 3. And I have to be very careful because if I start to brush like this, I'm going to lift up all that color. So the lifting technique can work to your advantage with this paper, just knowing that you can really only work in 1 or 2 layers with this kind of paper. Has nothing to do with the paint. It has everything to do with the paper. All right, I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a little bit of water around the bottom here and over here. Very light wash of water. You can see that the water doesn't, it kind of dry. It just sits on the top here. I'm going to add a little bit. A little bit of this Payne's Gray around the bottom here. Looks like a mess. Looks like a hot mess. And just work with the brush, the paint that's here. And I'm just going to do a little bit of brush dancing. So this is going to be like the height of it for being able to do wet into wet. This is it. This is the best we can do for wet into wet. And I'm doing like this little washy background. Put a little tiny bit in there. Let's come back over here and not neglect this. Let's turn this way. A little bit of a washy background. And I can wash it out. Get it like really kind of grayish. Can get it nice and washy. Kind of come in, take a little bit of it off. But you can see it's just sitting on the top of the paper. Which is fine. Which is fine. And that's kind of it. I can bring this in. Just kind of have it come up a little bit around those edges. Can kind of go in a little bit. Play with it. I'm going to come in just for my little final bit here. Pick up some, I got a finer brush. Pick up some of that Payne's Gray. And just kind of do a little bit of detail across. I'm going to pick up some of that Payne's Gray over here. Okay, so the Phoenix paint, I'm digging it. Been painting with it for maybe about 2 weeks now. Just playing with it. Kind of like it. Added that little bit of detail in there. Like it. Let's add a little bit of detail here. Little dots. Just with some of that Payne's Gray. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. And that's it. That's it. So not a ton of layers. This paint was super fun to work with. And like I said, I'm a sucker for the packaging. I'm a sucker for how it was put together. Here was like the one I did a couple days ago. Here's the one that I did on 100% cotton paper with that paint. And see, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more of a smoothie kind of look with quite a bit of texture in it. Here we've got some surface kind of look with texture. Still lovely. Still wonderful. Still beautiful. Just different. Just different. So your results can be different depending upon what paper you use. Super fun. Okay. Okay, friends, I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. We went about 5 minutes over. I'm surprised because I nerded out so much that I thought for sure we'd be like 2 hours with all my chitter chatter. So I hope you got a lot of little extra nuggets of information to kind of help you achieve more success with some budget-friendly watercolor supplies that you might have in your stash now. Remember, the part of painting in watercolor is just the joy of it and watching it flow and enjoying the process of learning what your paints can do and how they mix and how they work on your paper. Work with what you have, get it out, give it a try, and try it with the different things that you have in your stash to see how they work. There isn't like one way to do anything, right? We try and experiment with different ways to try different things. Okay, friends. Super fun. Okay, next week I will be back on Thursday with a brand new card tutorial using my new release with Gina K. I'm super excited. I can't wait to share more. The release is happening on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, and all the other, times across the country. So that's happening on Tuesday. I will have a new tutorial next Thursday using the new set. It's going to be super fun. I'm really excited. I've been creating quite a few things. Just looking at some of the comments. Catherine Shear, what I learned most today is that I need to practice my fine line brush strokes when it's not a washi technique. Yeah, and water control. One of the things I wanted to share today was water control. We worked in very, very, very light washes today. Cheryl shared this is going to be another fun month learning and experimenting. Yay! Yes, we're going to use budget-friendly watercolor supplies this month and have some fun with it. Okay, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm just so grateful that you could join me today. And yeah, if you're at all interested in being on my email list, that information is down below in the description. And I would love to see you in my free community at crafterjoylab.com. That information is down below in the description. We are having some fun over there, and we are cranking up to almost having 100 members in there. It's completely free to you. I'm sharing a lot of stuff in there that I don't share anywhere else. The whole reason why I started that community is because social media is bonkers, and our Facebooks and Instagrams are just chock full of clutter, and I wanted a clutter-free space that we could be in community together, and I could share watercolor with you in there. And I do have a technique discovery lab in there where I'm doing one tutorial a month that's exclusive to the members of that group. So, okay. All right, friends, everybody's saying, oh, well, hi, Anita. She said it's her first time watching and she thoroughly enjoyed it. Yay. Take a peek at all the other tutorials in the channel. I have like 350 some videos on this channel. It's crazy, crazy. Okay, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. I will see you next week, and I'm sending you into the weekend to craft your joy. And have a good one. Bye now.